Bethesda had a difficult task on their hands with Fallout 3. It was their first time making a game in this series that they didn't create, one with its own deep lore that they had to adapt to a whole new format. They had to find the answer to difficult questions about how close they should stick to the source material, what enemies from previous games should they bring to Fallout 3, and how faithfully should they recreate them, how will they present them in a fully 3D open world environment, what new enemies could they create that wouldn't feel out of place, and very importantly, how powerful should they be? What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Michael and welcome to FudgeMuppet. Today I'm excited to bring you a video exploring the all-time strongest enemy in Fallout 3. We've spent tons of time researching online, comparing enemy stats, and seeing how other people felt in terms of how strong each enemy was. We've even enlisted the help of fellow YouTuber and Fallout lover Madrybread to go into the Capital Wasteland to fight these enemies together, even using console commands to make these enemies battle each other for further investigation. The link to his channel can be found in the description below, so if you've got time, feel free to check it out. Do note that this video will not include NPCs who aren't regular enemies or who just happen to have really high stats. For example, Liberty Prime has 5 million health points, but wouldn't be classified as an enemy, and Forks, the super mutant, is one tough opponent if you attack him, but he's meant to be a companion. Also, while some of these enemies are really strong, obviously you can still cream them with an overpowered god character build. So if you've seen our videos exploring the strongest enemy of Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 4, then you know the drill here. For those who haven't, go check them out, but this video will go through all the contenders for the Fallout 3 strongest enemy crown as we showcase our findings and uncover the winner. With all that said, let's just hop right in here with our entry bar for the toughest of the tough, the Bruiser. Bruisers are the toughest of the swamp folk from the Point Lookout DLC. Giant mutated hillbilly humans who will charge at you either with an axe or their fists. With a whopping 700 health, the Bruiser has 40% more health than a Deathclaw and punches just as hard as one, dealing 100 damage per unarmed strike. If that weren't bad enough, they often come grouped with other swamp folk, so they can quickly overwhelm you if you're not careful. However, as dangerous as the Bruiser is in a group, he does have one big weakness that keeps him from being higher in our strongest enemy list. You see, the Bruiser often wields an axe, which deals nowhere near as much damage as his fists, or the other strong enemies in the game. That said, Bruisers will still sometimes just put away the axe and start using their fists. Now, I can't really figure out why they do it, so let me know in the comments if you find out. Either way, if he's attacking you with his axe, he won't deal enough damage to compare to the stronger monsters, and if he's using his fists, he is pretty dangerous, but even that has a weakness of its own. You see, Bruisers aren't that fast, and the unarmed attacks obviously don't have a lot of range. If you run away from a Bruiser, he often can't land a hit on you if you've got the room to keep moving. He often stops to punch, although he does possess a kind of quick sprint lunging unarmed attack, which can hit you if you're too careless. The problem with this though is that it's easy to dodge by simply moving to the side, and he won't do it unless you let him get close to you anyway. This is why we do testing, because often there's weaknesses that stats simply don't show. Anyways, make no mistake, the Bruiser is a tank, but while he is strong, his drawbacks are obvious in a one-on-one fight, and therefore he isn't as strong or dangerous as the really tough enemies. Finally, the Bruiser has no damage resistance, but his health makes up for it, and he does have 100% radiation resistance. Interestingly, no enemies on this list have actual damage resistance. One monster that doesn't have the same mobility weakness, though, is the classic Deathclaw. There's no doubt as to why people will instinctually assume this is the strongest creature in the game, but are they correct? Well, despite having only 500 health points, the lowest on this list, the Deathclaw deals some of the most damage due to speed. Like a swamp folk Bruiser, a Deathclaw deals 100 damage per strike, but the difference which makes it a more dangerous enemy is this. 1. A Deathclaw moves insanely fast, so it's almost impossible to outmaneuver it and run away. And 2. They attack extremely fast, so while they do the same damage per strike as a Bruiser, their damage output per second is way higher and you just can't flee. Like the Bruiser, however, they don't have a ranged attack, so you can have a better chance killing them if you begin shooting from far away. If you bump into one unprepared, you're going to be cut to shreds though. It's fast swipes are not only extremely difficult to dodge, but often there isn't even enough time between strikes to just block and then take your shot. I also recommend not only starting the fight with plenty of space between you and it, but also intentionally crippling its leg before it reaches you. This disables its leaping attack, making it less mobile and easier to defeat. It also slows it down, particularly so because Deathclaws are two-legged creatures, as opposed to being an abomination running on four legs. Furthermore, if you're planning on avoiding fighting Deathclaws altogether due to the animal friend perk, well, good luck, because even this perk doesn't pacify them. In summary, Deathclaws are super strong, and if you want to beat one safely, you're going to have to start the fight at a safe distance and hope there aren't other Deathclaws hiding just out of sight. However, it is this weakness to strong ranged attacks, their lower durability, and their lack of counter ranged attacks, which simply means they can't take the crown in this video. But not even a safe distance will save you from the next enemy. Introducing the Swamp Lurk Queen from the Point Lookout DLC. This has a solid 600 points of health. However, while it has no official damage resistance, it does take 33% less damage when shot in the torso, meaning that you'll really want to be getting headshots against it. This makes the battle tougher, and even this mutated monster has more health than a Deathclaw. In addition to this, don't expect to get many free hits from a distance before it hits you back. I say this because it has a powerful acid spit ranged attack which deals 100 points of damage, as much as a Deathclaw or Bruiser strike, but ranged. If you do get up close, it can still use this ranged attack, but it also has melee attacks which do 60 damage each. Not as deadly, but still solid, and these punches and swipes have very little wind-up time, sometimes just seeming to come out of nowhere. Strangely enough, if you want to take a stealthy approach, Swamp Lurk Queens can be pickpocketed, so you can slip an active grenade into its shell to kill it. It will result in some negative karma, but it's a lot easier than killing it without stealth. Now, in our testing, we battled these Swamp Lurk Queens against Deathclaws over and over, and the Swamp Lurk Queens seem to win almost every time. Now, if one catches you, your best bet is to stay just outside of arm's reach and circle it while shooting its head. These creatures actually have poor lateral movement and won't be able to punch you, although you'll still take an occasional 100 damage from its acid spit. If you're lucky enough, you'll cripple its head quickly to remove its ranged attack. In many ways, it's on par with a Deathclaw in terms of how dangerous it is, but at the same time, it really depends what character you're playing, what you know about these enemies, and what situation you're in. For example, most players would not know that the Swamp Lurk Queen has poor lateral movement, and therefore won't bother exploiting it. Anyway, in a nutshell, this enemy is very durable, dishing out plenty of damage at range and up close. But if you know how it moves and where its weak spots are, you'll have a better time fighting it. But now let's move on to the next enemy on this list. You won't be able to use a circling tactic to win this time. At this point in the video, we're about to take a massive jump up in difficulty, fighting against one of the most terrifying monsters in all of Fallout 3, the Feral Ghoul Reaver. This enemy might just look like any normal ghoul roamer, but don't be fooled. A roamer only has 80 health, but the Reaver has an insane 1,100. As if that isn't enough, it will actively heal itself in a radioactive environment. Its insanely fast lunges and strikes are nearly impossible to dodge, and there's no way you're going to outrun it. Even if you manage to attack it at a range, it can throw its own body parts as radioactive grenades, easily crippling you and healing itself in the process. You'll even have trouble sneaking around them because Reavers can easily detect you even when you're using a stealth boy or Chinese stealth armor. In our testing, we found that just one Feral Ghoul Reaver can easily kill 3 Swamp Lurk Queens at the same time. They're that big of a jump in difficulty and danger. If you're unlucky enough to bump into one thinking it's just some random ghoul, your best bet is to just pick a leg and throw everything at it, hoping to cripple it so that you can get away from its relentless melee attacks. Even after you've done that, it might just be best to run away entirely, because if you stay and fight it, you'll still be in range of its grenades. Overall, this creature is just so disgustingly powerful, I really wondered if it could take home the gold in this video. If you search up Feral Ghoul Reaver on YouTube, there's a video of someone fighting it on very hard difficulty with about 5 allies, and it took them forever to kill it. Anyways, it's just so strong, but unbelievably, it still isn't the strongest thing in the game. In fact, it's not even the most dangerous explosive using enemy in the game, because the grenade throwing super mutant Overlord is the king of ranged combat in Fallout 3, coming to the the fight with a whopping 1,250 health and often leading a group of other super mutants. The super mutant Overlord is easily the most dangerous ranged enemy in the game, having the ability to spawn with a Gatling laser, tri-beam laser rifle, or missile launcher. And don't go thinking you're lucky if you get one that spawned with a tri-beam laser rifle, because the Overlords have a special bonus with that gun where 40 of the damage dealt is unblockable, so even the most unarmored of characters can be taken down quickly. But maybe you're great at ranged combat and have the perfect cover to hide behind. Well, as I was saying, the Overlord can also spawn with frag grenades, which will be thrown at you when you least desire it. In addition to this, Overlords also have a special version of the Super Sledge that deals 25 more damage than a normal one, and much like the tri-beam bonus, this bonus also pierces through your armor. An Overlord has the health of 2.5 Deathclaws, has some of the most terrifying guns in the game, and is backed up by his posse of other terrifying enemies, and even without his friends, he is still stronger than the other enemies previously showcased on this list. That said, if you want to put him as equal with the Reaver due to his weakness, then fair enough. This weakness is that if you keep shooting at his gun arm, he can drop his weapon quite easily. Regardless, his strength as an enemy is pretty straightforward to understand, so it doesn't take much explaining to see what an absolute menace he is. But now it's time for what you all probably saw coming. This bad boy still isn't the most dangerous super mutant in the game. The super mutant Behemoth is a 20-foot tall mutated mountain of muscle, coming to the fight with an insane 2,000 health. The Behemoth is extremely hard to kill, and many people believe it to be the all-time strongest enemy in the game. With its shocking speeds for a creature its size and very long reach with its fire hydrant bat, it's hard to escape the Behemoth after it set its sights on you. It may not have the ability to deal damage as rapidly as an Overlord, but I can't emphasize enough just how hard it is to kill a 2,000 health super mutant charging directly at you. You can't just take an easy way out and cripple a leg, or get some lucky ability disabling hit to the head in VATS. Unless you're playing a really powerful endgame build, it's going to take some serious planning to take it out. Lay landmines, start the fight with a sneak attack, bring a fat man with mini nukes, anything you can to deal serious damage before the Behemoth can get his hands on you. If there's ever a time to pull out all those explosives you've been hoarding, it's when a walking condominium decides that you're lunch. Each slam he lands with his massive fire hydrant does 100 damage, and while you may not think of him as a fast opponent because he's so big and you're so small in comparison, he technically covers ground a lot faster than you do. Also, one variant of the Behemoth just uses his fists, and I've seen an amusing video on YouTube where a standard Deathclaw defeated him. Either way, this video definitely refers to the Behemoths who have fire hydrants. That all said, as terrifying as the super mutant Behemoth is, I still don't think it's the most dangerous enemy in the game. The Behemoth has the one major weakness of having terribly bad pathfinding. If fought in rough enough terrain, it's easy to get the Behemoth stuck on rubble and debris, giving you a chance to get some free shots in before repositioning to a new area for it to get stuck on again. This is a problem that the most dangerous enemy in the game doesn't really have, and when I reveal it, I'm sure I'll see plenty of debates in the comment section below. Before I reveal it, let's go through some other problems with the Behemoth. So when we fought this juggernaut of a super mutant against other enemies in the game, it always seems to win because it gets the knockdown on them, basically trapping them in a knockdown state while it continually hits them with the hydrant, preventing them from getting back up until they die. This actually allowed the Behemoth to easily defeat the true strongest enemy in the game. However, this video is about how each enemy fares against us, the player. We just have them battle each other for even more data. If you want to look at it from a perspective of which enemy wins if they fight against each other, well then there's no big reveal here. It would definitely be the super mutant Behemoth. But while this monster easily knocks down other enemies, the same effect didn't occur to the player during our testing. It may have a massive 4 times as much health as a Deathclaw, but due to the previously mentioned factors, mainly being the poor movement tracking and the fact that it only does the same damage as a Deathclaw, and you'll quickly see why our number 1 champion wins the contest. So now we've reached the point where I can reveal the strongest enemy in Fallout 3, including all DLCs if you hadn't noticed. And no, I'm not going to tell you it's a bloatfly. This wicked creature takes home the gold with 3 times as much health as a Deathclaw, as opposed to 4 times as much like a Behemoth, but instead of doing the same damage, it technically does double. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Fallout 3's most powerful enemy, the Albino Radscorpion, or for the Americans out there, the albino albino rad scorpion. This 1,500 health beast is simply inescapable in most environments. It's extremely fast, maneuvers around obstacles better than most enemies in the game, and is brutally hard to dodge. On top of that, it easily has the highest damage per second in the game. It deals 100 damage per hit, plus another 100 poison damage that bypasses your armor over the course of 4 seconds if it hits you with its stinger. As if doubling the damage of the Behemoth wasn't bad enough, it even attacks faster and more often. Nothing can kill you as fast as an albino rad scorpion. Good luck if you want to avoid taking damage in the first place, as this scorpion tracks you very well. Even if you want to run backwards and shoot, it will constantly be hitting you. However, you can just run backwards and shoot at it, and it won't be able to catch you if you've crippled its legs. If you can shoot it from the side at the start of the encounter, doing a lot of damage to its legs, you'll be in a much better position as opposed to fighting it front on. This is because face on, they tend to protect their legs with their massive claws. Due to this, fighting this rad scorpion from angled terrain is highly recommended. Either way, if it gets up close and you haven't crippled the legs, which is often the case due to its speed and the fact that you can't see it from a mile away like a behemoth, you're going to have an issue. Even when you try to strafe around it to get a clean shot, it just readjusts almost instantly and keeps hitting you. You often won't even be able to use a grenade or landmine to cripple its legs because you'll never get far enough away from it to avoid the blast. Like the behemoth though, you can just set up a bunch of explosives from far away if you happen to spot one on the horizon. Often they even come in pairs, but we're not taking that into account for our ranking. Needless to say, you'll want to kill it quickly and from far away, but not only does it have the health of 3 Deathclaws, but it actually heals when exposed to sunlight, much like the solar powered perk, meaning that if the fight goes on long enough, you might end up having to deal more than 2,000 damage to it to kill it, more than the health of a super mutant's behemoth, although chances are you'd be dead by then, or you ran away and came back to the fight. Now while this absolute beast isn't as easy to trick into getting stuck on pieces of environment, such as rubble as a behemoth is, there is one weird thing that I've seen happen. Now this is very inconsistent, but if an albino rad scorpion does get close to you, there's a chance in a certain sweet spot of distance between the two of you that it changes its movement speed matching yours. This can put you in a position where you can just keep running backwards and shooting it as it matches your speed and constantly spams its tail jab attack, missing each one. However, if you happen to hit anything that slows you down even slightly, like a tiny incline in the ground or a small obstacle, then usually that extra inch of gain he gets will be enough for him to reach you and thrust that poison injection straight into your veins. So running backwards only works if you happen to find that sweet spot and have a gun that kills it really fast, and you have a perfectly even straight bit of land to run along, or cripple the legs before it sees you and squares up. A more likely way to kill it without as big of a setup is the classic stealthy route, hammering the legs while you've got the chance, but using stealth works on just about anything, so it isn't a specific weakness to this abomination. Nonetheless, from all the extensive testing we did, it truly seems like the albino rad scorpion has to be number 1. It may be a bit easier to get around if you're in a very set up environment to fight it and have a really high-end weapon, but it's much harder to do that setup than it is to simply mess with the pathfinding of a behemoth, which ultimately only deal half as much damage anyway and don't have the same sunlight health regen that the rad scorpions do. So there you have it guys, the strongest enemy in Fallout 3. Between its crazy damage output, natural healing, super high health, and incredible movement speed, the albino rad scorpion is simply the biggest threat in the Capital Wasteland. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe, click our social media links in the description below, and check out our Patreon page where you can help support the channel for as little as $1 a month. Tell us what enemy you struggle with the most in the comments. Tell us if you pronounce it albino or albino and where you're from. I've been Michael, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.